Well, it was one of the most sensationalised trials of the 90s. The Menendez brothers, Lyle and Eric, shocked the world by brutally killing their parents. Their highly publicised trial became a media sensation, eventually leading to life sentences for the boys.
But now, 30 years later, their case is back in the spotlight thanks to a new Netflix series. And with new evidence now being examined by prosecutors, a review could possibly see the brothers' prison sentences re-evaluated. For more, we're joined by high-profile criminal lawyer Benjamin Chew. Thanks for joining us, Benjamin. So, how often do cases like the Menendez brothers' case get reconsidered like this?
It's very unusual, and there is explosive potential new evidence of potential abuse by the father, Jose, that has caused the DA to publicly announce that there's a reopened investigation.
So that has to be pretty convincing, doesn't it? Run us through the story behind this, because he was the head of RCA Records, and the allegation comes from a band member back in the 80s. Is that right?
It does. That was the genesis of the allegation, but in particular, there is a letter from one of the brothers that makes it clear, or at least suggests, that the father, Jose, was responsible for sexual abuse. And this does, even though that issue was raised in the underlying trial, this is evidence that was not presented before the court and may well cause reconsideration of the sentence more likely than the verdict itself.
This hugely popular Netflix series that obviously has put it back in the conversations for people, how important is that for a case like this to get reconsidered?
It's important, it's rare, and I think that probably the popularity of the Netflix series did raise its profile so that the DA was under a certain amount of pressure to respond, and now he has, and good for him. You know, when new evidence like this does come forward, I think it's good for there to be some reconsideration. These men have been in prison for a long time, and again, I don't think it goes to guilt or innocence, but it may well be a ticket for them to be released sooner than they might otherwise.
So what do they do? Do they look at whether the dad could have abused someone before, and then whether it is more likely that he abused the boys?
Yes, that's right. And it really goes to mitigation of the sentence. In other words, it wouldn't serve as a defense to the underlying crime, but there's always a sentencing phase of a criminal trial after there had been a finding of guilt. And I think that this is evidence that the jury would have wanted to consider before passing sentence. It's obviously quite sympathetic. If someone has been sexually abused by a parent, that is something that I think should be considered in sentencing. So it's a horrific crime, obviously, sexual abuse.
Yeah, so given, I mean, it's very hard for you to have an opinion on it professionally, but what do you think, given that type of evidence, and whether or not they could be released and walk free again at some point?
I think the likelihood is substantial that they will walk free, if not immediately, in the near future, because again, they've been serving decades in prison. I don't think anybody is seriously talking about retrying on the merits, although that may be something their lawyers seek. I think more likely, that they've been in prison for 27 years, as your graphic shows, and that may be enough under these circumstances. If ultimately the DA and the court is convinced that there was abuse here, that sounds like it might be enough time.
You're right, because the sentences were life, weren't they? Criminal lawyer Benjamin Chew, we thank you very much for your time.